Good afternoon, Ta'alofa. Once again, this is becoming our regular public statements on the workings of Cabinet and some of the activities of government in the past week, or current issues that have arisen. The Cabinet received yesterday the draft budget prepared by the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance for the annual budget of the year 21-22. It has been prepared with the hope of tabling the budget in later this month. It has been determined, now that Cabinet has had the opportunity to review the draft prepared by the Minister and her Ministry, that the budget will be tabled on the 14th of September, which is the date that has been set in consultation with the Honourable Speaker. It is important that the budget is approved and passed by Parliament at the end of September, so that the budget processes and the workings of government can be returned to normalcy beginning in October, to take us through to the end of this financial year, which will be June 22. I wish to acknowledge the work that has been done by the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance in bringing forward this budget. We've, as an incoming administration, we've used the time available to us to review the preparatory work that had been done by the Ministry in the normal processing of the preparations of the budget, but also to ensure that some of the priorities set by the incoming government can begin to be introduced during this budget. Cabinet, we're very pleased to receive the draft budget yesterday. Once that Cabinet had been able to review the budget, the heads of ministries and other agencies of the government were then called in so that jointly, as an administration moving forward, that everyone understands where the preparation, especially for the budget, is at. Of course, as in the past, the practice is the details of the budget will then be made public once it's been tabled on the parliamentary agenda. The second matter I want to speak to briefly has to do with an open letter that has been published, I think, in the last week from some members of the public service raising concerns about the security of their jobs. My office has now received this letter, and I would like, as it is addressed to me, I would like to have the time to review the substance of the letter and to make the appropriate responses. The letter was an open letter. It has been out in the public prior to its arrival to my office, but I think it's only right that now it has arrived to my office formally, that I would like to take the time to review and make the appropriate responses. I would just like, however, though, to just briefly touch on what is perceived by some public servants, that the incoming administration has a policy of clearing out all the heads of ministries and agencies. I would like to make it quite clear through this publication that that is not the intent of this new administration. It is not a policy, and we have continuously said on other occasions that we, as an incoming administration, we hope to work with our public servants. They are the implementers of government policy, and we will continue to do so. Now, we've always advocated that this party puts the rule of law above all things, and the public servants, especially those who are on contract, and even those who are not on contract but are covered under the Public Service Act, that everyone on both sides of the issue are covered by the law. And I would just like to give some comfort to the concerns that seem to be prevailing, that somehow this new administration has a policy that we will clear out the heads of departments that are currently in place. I think it's important that we actually look to the specific instances where some of the officials are either being let go or there are negotiations in process, especially in the situation where the government feels that we cannot work with these individuals, and namely the AG, the Secretary, the Clerk of the House, in that because of past happenings, not necessarily of their making, but of the circumstances around the electoral process and the processing of issues through the courts, and their own participation through their respective positions, that it is an untenable situation for the new administration to continue working with these officials when there is essentially a loss of confidence. Now, these matters are being processed duly, and we have always advocated for the rule of law, and we want to assure the public service that all of us, we are mandated, and we do have our particular rights as public servants. So the response at this stage to the open letter of the public service is that I have received it formally now in my office. It arrived yesterday afternoon. I would like to have the time to give it due consideration and make the appropriate responses. So essentially, these are the only two matters for this week. Although it may seem it is only a few matters, but especially the preparation of the budget and the organization around the processing of the budget now to Parliament has been the priority for Cabinet in the last couple of weeks. So I would like to wish everyone a good afternoon, and hopefully next week we can continue the publications with regards to the activities of government. Yeah, Fafstay Lava.
Prime Minister, my question is on the IPCC report that was issued in August. The country submitted its second NDC in July, but in response to climate change impacts highlighted by the report, what are immediate climate actions that will be taken by our government?
I think our commitment is still the one that we made earlier, to be 100% renewable energy in the electricity sector. Only 2025 foot. Yeah. So I think when we're still with that commitment. I actually haven't seen the details of the latest commitments made by us. But I think along, the regional approach has been, we're holding on, to the 1.5. We're meeting our commitments with emissions, which is not difficult. But, it still doesn't hurt that we do that. But more to the point is what actions we are taking for not only mitigation but also adaptation. So the mitigation part, requires active engagement, whether it's government policy, government action, but also, the general population. So, for instance, one of the big projects that the MNRE has been heading up is our 2 million trees. So I think we need to also step up what our actions are, especially around the protections of natural resources, because essentially that's the renewable, whether it's for energy purposes or, water or so forth.
So climate activists in the Solomon Islands recently challenged world leaders to bring COP to the Pacific. Do you think this is possible?
Yes, I mean, we've, the Pacific has hosted some significant world conferences. I think we have to look at, Fiji is possibly, the place that can, in terms of venue and facilities, because, these meetings are huge meetings. So it can be done. But I think the difficulty is with the uncertainty of the COVID.
But aside from uncertainty of COVID, do you think Samoa would consider hosting such an event?
It would not be our priority at the present time. I'm not sure that our sort of economic base, whether we can afford that. So I think we really do have to prioritize. It would be a good thing to do, but whether we can do it and do it well is another thing.